Today's first reading comes to us from the book of Sirach, also known as the Wisdom of Ben Sirach. It's also known as the book of Ecclesiasticus, so it has several names. And it was considered, according to the New American Bible Revised Edition, where I got this, by the way, it was considered the church book in the early days of the church. So it talks about a lot of the wisdom that we see in there. This is where my favorite Bible verse from the Old Testament is. It's chapter 2 of Sirach, which talks about understanding, to trust in the Lord, to have patience, and to know that our difficulties are fire where gold is tested, and the worthy in the crucible of humiliation. It's absolutely one of my favorite passages in the Bible. But today we're looking at chapter 47, and it's in a section that celebrates many of the leaders of the Old Testament we see, and will include some who aren't in the Old Testament. Enoch is one, but it talks about Noah, it talks about Abraham, etc., etc. And today's version, or today's passage, talks about David. And there are some important things to look at when we are understanding David. Now, one of the things we do want to realize is when I talk to you about different sections, remember, I'm reading from the Douay-Rheims. Why? Copyright issues. It's a real issue. Believe it or not. You say, Father, that's crazy. Yes, well, you can take it up with certain people who own the copyrights. So for the most part, it's actually not an issue, but in some cases it is. But the best way to get around that is to read from a Bible that was copyrighted in the 17th century. And make sure you know which words are updated and everything else. So that's what I do. And that's the Douay-Rheims. That's the traditional Bible that was used. I'm not making any statement in regards to this. That was used right up until Vatican II. So the Douay-Rheims, again, translated in the 17th century. So, and translated into English. And that's why I actually update it, but it actually uses the Old English. But we're talking about David, and this is a tribute to King David. And maybe we want to be careful of it to a point, because there's elements of this which, I know some people are not going to like what I'm about to say, which may or may not be true. Now, we say, but this is the Bible. Every word is true. No, that's not true. The Bible is communicating a message which is true, but every word is not necessarily literally true. And we understand. Remember, as Pope Benedict XVI reminded us, that Genesis is not a mechanistic account of the creation of the world, but what is the most important message in Genesis? That God created the world, and in doing so, there are no gods in the world except for the one God. That's the significant message in that whole story. And then also, why is it that humans don't seem to fit with the rest of the world? Because humans are subject to what is known as original sin, and we understand all that. But here we're looking at David, and one of the things that's is shown as an example of this, as the fat taken away from the flesh, so was David chosen from among the children of Israel. What does that mean? Well, that was the choice part of the flesh that was offered up to God. So David was the choice part that was offered up to God. And it adds, now this is where we get into some of the things I'd say, well, do we really know that was true? He played with lions as with lambs, and with bears he did in like manner as with the lambs of the flock in his youth. Did he really play with lions as he did with lambs? The reason why I say that is, you have those stories of these. Well, did George Washington actually chop down a cherry tree? Did he really say that did George Washington really never lie and all this other stuff? We don't know. These are rumors said about, or folklore said about George Washington, and this might be folklore that is being said about King David. He may have played with lions as with lambs. We don't know, but that can also be some of that folklore. One of the ones that pops into my mind, certainly not of the same caliber by any stretch of the imagination, is, I don't know if you know that if you talk to anyone in North Korea, how does Kim Jong-un, how well does he golf? They'll tell you he gets a hole-in-one on every hole. So there you go. That kind of folklore may be, and this is actually written, by the way, towards roughly about 170. Well, it says it was finished, they believe, around 175 BC. That's according to the New American Bible Revised Edition. So you're talking the 2nd century BC, but David lived almost a full millennia before that. Not quite, but almost a full millennia before that. Millennium, sorry. And so this is well after his time. And so we're looking at that, and we're seeing, David, and we're seeing these stories. So are they true? We don't know. But that's not the point of the story. The point is not that he could play with lions as he would with lambs, or bears similarly. The point is what we're understanding about David, and that really comes here. Did he not kill the giant and take away the reproach from his people? And that's the story of Goliath. Remember what I said when we were reading through the story of Goliath? Goliath would not have been 15 feet tall, as many people said. I mean, you have to think about it. If he was 15 feet tall, who was going to build clothes for him? And those clothes would weigh quite a bit. But it's believed that he may have been someone like Andre the Giant, who was 7 feet tall. And David, of course, would have been much, much shorter. Even if David was 5 feet 10 inches, it's very possible that Goliath could have been well into 7 feet, maybe even close to 8, in which case he would tower over David and over the others. And as you know, in certain cultures, and this is well known, the height of a person depends on how well their diet was. I mean, it's also genetics and everything else. So at the time, the Israelis could, Israel could have been rather short compared to the giant. So we don't know. But did he kill the giant? Yes. And take away the reproach of his people. Well, what was happening? Because the Philistines, also known as the Sea Peoples, were very, very tough and very strong and powerful people, and they were attacking Israel. And this was common to the cultures at the time. And as we know, David defeated Goliath with the one stone. And then he continues on, but this is what we want to focus on. He says, for he called upon the Lord Almighty and gave strength in his right hand to take away the mighty warrior and to set up the horn of his nation. What is established here is just how much of a relationship with God David had. And we talked about that earlier, but that's the focus here. So this is one of the things that's so important. That David was strong because, as it says here in verse 10, with his whole heart, he worshiped the Lord. He praised the Lord, rather, and loved God that made him and gave him power over his enemies. This is an important distinction because one of the things I think that's really a problem in our church, and we talked about it yesterday, I'm talking about church nationwide, and there are people that are speaking out and saying, no, this has got to stop, is this whole focus is you have to turn from sin. Well, obviously that's true, but no focus on worshiping God. This is why, as I said it yesterday, I get really irritated with these online exorcists. When you're going through YouTube, I might give that up for Lent. I'm kind of thinking that through. But when you're going through YouTube and you see one of these exorcists, and I can name them by name, but I won't, and they're like, this is what the devil wants. This is how the devil, this is where's the focus. It's on the devil. Are these people preaching anything about loving God? Maybe they are. But I look at that and saying, why aren't these bishops telling these priest, knock it off. And these others who were just constantly preaching against sin. What do we see here? David praised the Lord. But Father, people need to turn from sin. That's what they got to do. Yes, you're right. But if they focus on loving God, they're going to turn from sin. And they're going to learn more which sins that they never noticed before that the Lord is calling them away from. So you understand that our focus needs to be on praising God. That's why the most important thing you can do is to pray. The focus should not be on avoiding sin. You can become an atheist that way. And there are many who are avoiding sin who are fundamental atheists because they don't understand it's developing a relationship with God. But David had one. And the Lord helped him, and we understand that. With his whole heart, he praised the Lord and loved God that made him and gave him power over his enemies. Do you want to go to heaven and turn from sin? If you turn and praise the Lord, he is going to give you the wisdom to understand how to deal with your enemies. Those are two different messages. And if you're focused on turning from sin, which is important, don't ever quote anyone saying to me, or don't have anyone quote to me, oh, he doesn't care about people turning from sin. Of course I do. But your focus is called to be praising the Lord. And in all his works, he gave thanks to the Holy One and to the Most High with the words of glory. You see, this is what is being focused here. So where did David's strength come from? Draw your strength from the Lord and his mighty power, as St. Paul says. It came from praising God and having relationship with God. Where does your strength and wisdom come from? Praising God, having a relationship with the Lord. There it is. This whole issue where people have taught, and I think this is the Lord is stepping in and saying this has got to change. Your whole focus needs to be on living a moral life, which is important. Don't let anyone tell you it isn't. Is leading people away from understanding, no, your whole focus is on praising God, of having a relationship with the Lord, who will show you how to live a moral life and will give you strength and wisdom. That is our message all the time. And so David understood that. So when we go back to that whole concept that who's the one who gets to heaven is the one who is living a moral life, and so they get this attitude, well, I'm good enough to get to heaven. I don't have to go to church. That goes against everything we see here. Because how is it that we're called to live, not just how to get to heaven, because as Pope John Paul II taught, the kingdom, as Jesus taught first, kingdom of heaven is within, and Pope John Paul II taught, as Jesus would indicate, it is a state of being. So how does our focus on heaven happen? Our focus on heaven comes from understanding that we're called to have a relationship with God. So therefore, is there such a thing in our Catholic faith as I'm good enough to get to heaven, I don't need to go to church? No. And it's not, well, no one's good enough to get to heaven. That's true. But at the same time, what is your relationship with God? That's where it starts. We have to be people of prayer, people who pray and worship. And when you're going through a difficult time, the best thing to do is to praise the Lord. Do you know, if you're dealing with, say for example, you're a parent, you're dealing with a real difficult struggle with your children, which we've seen in the reading the Old Testament, would not be unusual to you, as we saw with David and Absalom. But you need to go before the Lord and praise God for that situation and ask the Lord to give you the wisdom to change the situation. That's what is needed. And that is essential. And remember what we looked at earlier in the week. Even though Absalom was a rebel against David, David still cared about Absalom. Really powerful things that we look at. And so this is that powerful message that we're looking for that is coming in today's reading. So when you're at Mass today, if by chance you go to Mass or if you look over the readings and everything, you can see this is the background. Now that section of Sirach, those chapters from around there are also focused on other major leaders of the Jewish people, what we call today the Jewish people, also known as the Hebrews, also known as Israel. So you can go through that and read those powerful things. But there we go. Always keep in mind that David had that relationship with God, and we're called to do the same. We're going to be back right after this. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe and like and everything else. Did you know that the Catholic Audio Media Podcast is available on various podcast platforms? You can find us, among others, on Podbean, which is our home platform. You can find it on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart, among others. Just look for Catholic Audio Media, all one word. On some platforms, such as Spotify, look for Catholic Audio Media, 3 words, and subscribe and listen to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon, patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media, patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer, previews of upcoming podcasts, previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com, your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out, patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is, of course, the Super Bowl is coming up this weekend. And, of course, I am from New England. And therefore, we obviously have an interest in watching the Super Bowl, besides normally because it's such a major game. But, you know, this is going to be important for us watching the New England Patriots. And I'm going to enjoy it. I'm looking forward to it. But there's been a little controversy over the halftime show because there is a singer by the name of Bad Bunny. Now, I don't know a lot about Bad Bunny, but obviously I am into Latin music. I love Latin music, and especially salsa, merengue, and cumbia, and all that. And I guess he sings a kind of, well, first of all, I saw one of his videos where he sang in salsa, which I love, and they also did the traditional dance commonly done to salsa. And you have to understand, this is a whole culture, and he's going to be singing at the halftime show. And a lot of people are upset because I think he'll be singing in Spanish. So what? That's the language. That's the main language they speak in Puerto Rico. In Puerto Rico is how we pronounce it in English, but Puerto Rico. And by the way, if you've ever heard the word Boricua, Boricua is the tribe that is from Puerto Rico. So if you ever see Boricua, that's what it means. So anyway, he is maybe sing in Spanish, and all these people are upset. Oh no, there's some people even saying they should have an American singer. He is let me do this differently. He is an American singer. He's from Puerto Rico. That is actually, we all know that. That's an American territory. Are you going to say that if someone comes from Guam, you're going to turn around and say, well, they should have an American singer, not a Japanese singer? He's from Guam. He's from the United States. If you fly to Puerto Rico and you get off the plane, you go, are they going to check my passport? They're going to go, no, you're in the United States of America. You're here. So that is ignorant, and I found that really upsetting, and it was interesting. Now, I didn't watch the Grammys. I didn't watch the Grammys not because I was busy, because I don't watch the Grammys. There is a program of the Grammys that I do like to watch. I don't see it that often, but when I do, and that is the Latin Grammys. And I'm going to tell you, out of all the awards shows I've seen, at least that particular year, and I forget what year it was, the Latin Grammys is the classiest award show I have ever seen, because Latin America is a very, people who haven't been there don't understand, is a very classy place. People, you have to understand that. It's a very classy place. And the Latin Grammys was, when I watched it that year, was absolutely classy. And it was interesting because I guess it was Trevor Noah, who's from South Africa, by the way. So he's not from the United States. Trevor Noah was talking to Bad Bunny, and he said something about, something about what countries he's from. I'm from, I forget exactly what he's, basically the message was, why don't they bring an American or something? He says, I am an American. This is an important distinction. So when people say, like, for example, I know another group, I'm not going to mention the name, another group is going to have their own Super Bowl halftime show that you can change the channel and you can go watch them. Why? First of all, this is the Super Bowl, which ultimately, on top of everything else, is a football game. This is entertainment during the Super Bowl, which on top of everything else is entertainment during a football game. So let's start right there. It's kind of like people will tell you, what's the most important thing that happens in Las Vegas? Las Vegas is a city of entertainment, extremely important. I love Las Vegas. It's a beautiful city, the whole bit. But what's the most important thing that happens in Las Vegas? It's an entertainment city, is entertainment. If it's not the financial capital of the world, believe it or not, like New York is, it's not the center of Hollywood. It's the center of a lot of that entertainment industry. So, it's entertainment. Just get over it. But the people who are complaining because, this is Bad Bunny, I don't know enough about his music. I'm going to watch the halftime. If I end up watching the show, I may be busy, but I plan to watch the halftime. And they're saying, everyone, first of all, people are saying, this is what you need to do. You need to turn away from your TV channels, from watching TV, and they'll know that you turn the channel, and because cable and everything else, if it's over the air, they won't know. They'll know you changed the channel, and that'll be assigned to them. Why? What are you saying about? And that's one of the things I'm having, because when I say why, what is Bad Bunny doing? Now, one of the things that Bad Bunny has said, I know he's against ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And I think he said he's going to stop doing shows in what we would call the continental United States because he's concerned about ICE showing up at his shows. He sings to the Latin American audience. That is a legitimate concern. I'm sorry. I'm not saying anything against ICE, but the fact that it's very possible that they may show up at his shows, is very possible. That's real. And I'm sorry, because that is the audience, that is his audience, and there are people within that audience that ICE is looking for. So that is a legitimate concern. And so he says, fine, if this is going to be the case, I'm not going to sing in the continental United States. Obviously he sings in Puerto Rico. So we see that, and, you want to look at the entire issue. Now, right now, there are people, this is one of the things that's happened with all this focus on ICE, and I'm not focused. ICE they're part of the American, they're part of the American government. I'm not attacking ICE or anything like that. But now, which is their role and should have been their role all along, there are people in Congress that are starting to say we need to change how this is being done. Well, Donald Trump asked them to do that. What was it, 6 years ago, and they didn't. They failed. That's the role of of Congress to make the laws and address how they are being enforced. That's their role. And these are Republican representatives. One of them is Representative Mike Lawler, who are coming up and saying, we've got to settle this. We've got to address this law. Yes, you should have. But you see, this is what's happening. So in one case, that's being addressed. But how does it need to be addressed? Congress has to address it. What can you do about it? You can contact your congressperson and say, when are you going to fix these immigration laws? You understand what I'm saying? And that's something to look at. But this whole thing where people are all upset, and then there was one thing, I think it was Megyn Kelly who pointed out that there's a scene with him wearing a dress. Sometime look up Conchita Wurst, who is very popular in Latin America. Conchita Wurst, W-U-R-S-T. If you're concerned with Bad Bunny wearing a dress, you would be concerned with Conchita Wurst. That's you. But I just want you to know, he's very popular in Latin America. So even though he's German. His real name is Thomas Neuwirth, just so you know. But these are things people look at. Oh, we're going to fight. What are you going to fight? This is an entertainment show. Bad Bunny is an American. He's part of our American story. If you're going to get all upset over this, and or worse yet, you're being manipulated to not watch Bad Bunny, and all people saying, no, we've got to no. Let that go, because personally, I think that's grossly insulting to the Puerto Rican community in every one of our neighborhoods. And it is completely unacceptable. This is not the way we treat other Americans, and we should treat, especially as Catholics. So, and by the way, former auxiliary bishop of Boston is now, I think, a cardinal in Puerto Rico. He is a cardinal in Puerto Rico, Roberto Gonzalez. So we understand that. So don't get into this whole thing over Bad Bunny, please. If you like him, you like him. If you don't, whatever. Going back to receive your high school diploma can make a huge difference in your life. Not just for you, but for your loved ones and your community as well. Across the country, thousands of free adult education centers are ready to help with teachers who will guide you every step of the way. Find free and supportive adult education centers near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council and the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back. So have yourself a good weekend. We don't have a Catholic Audio Media weekend show this weekend, so we will be back to see you on Monday. We're drawing close to Lent, by the way, and we're already starting to plan our schedule for Ash Wednesday. I'm going to be working, obviously, in 2 hospitals, so I'm actually going to give out ashes in a convent and in 2 hospitals. So it'll be interesting. That's always one of our busiest days, Ash Wednesday. And if you find, plus I'm also taking, because it's our busiest day, and my role is not only to be a hospital chaplain, but to help the other priests so that they can be focused on their own parish work. And still the people in the hospitals are cared for. I'm taking hospital duty the 24 hours that is Ash Wednesday. So we'll be doing that as well. So I'll be riding back and forth. I should put some kind of markings on my car, hospital chaplain, whatever the case. I'll be riding back and forth between the 2 hospitals and the convent and everything else. But that's not actually for another 10 days. So we've got next week, and we're going to be looking at a whole new set of readings next week. And then we're going to head into the final half week. As a matter of fact, next week, we're going to be looking at Solomon. So we're going to understand his whole story, the son of David. and the you could say the earthly son of David, because we know Jesus is also known as the son of David. We also know that Jesus is known as the Son of God. Obviously, just like in Advent, this is all pointing to Jesus, and we look at that. But we know Solomon, like his father, had his issues, and one of his issues actually detoured him, and we may look at that. I'll have to see if that's part of the readings. In any case, we're going to see you on Monday. Have yourself a blessed day, and don't forget to subscribe, to like, to pass the word. We'll see you then. The Catholic teaching in this podcast is reflected and presented as accurately as possible. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution.